My father was born in Germany in 1884. In 1905, he served in the German army. He spent time, I guess, they said, in China. I never talked to him about it. He didn't talk to me I was the 7th one born in the family. So I didn't talk to him too much about that. And now I wish I had. He was born in the same town where Einstein was born, 5 years apart. They probably went to the same school. But my father was a great man. And I told you about there being 6 boys in the family, and all 6 served in the U.S. service at one time or another. My oldest brother was in the first draft contingent to leave the city of Oswego. When they started drafting people, the United States was not prepared for war. We didn't have a military, we didn't have this, we didn't have anything. But we had to prepare for that World War II. And my oldest brother was in the first draft contingent, and I'm going to make the story short. He was killed just before the end of the war. He was killed at Cologne, Germany, where my father was born. My father, I never talked to him about it, but he must have had some mixed feelings to think that that was his country. And his oldest son was killed there in World War II. I went into World War II after my brother was killed. He was killed, and then I went in. My mother had mixed feelings when another son was going to go in to the military. And I would have been in on D-Day, but they didn't take me in 1944 because I had bad eyesight. But then the next year, 1945, I got drafted and I went. My brother was killed in February. The war actually in Europe was over in May. We bombed Hiroshima and Nagasaki the first week of August, and I went in a couple of weeks later. So I was actually in during World War II, and I did a service because a lot of the people were coming back from overseas. And I worked with those people coming back from overseas with discharge papers, and it was all important information, all important stuff that I was doing. But, and I was scheduled to go to Europe after World War II. They call them occupation forces. But the thing is, I had lost my brother. So I found out if you lost someone in your immediate family, that you could get scratched from going overseas. So I got scratched. Then they didn't need me in this country anymore. So they let me out, and that's why I went back to college. I started college about 5 or 6 weeks late. College had started in September, and I went in about 5 or 6 weeks late, but I caught up. And there was a lot of people from military that were filling the colleges at that time. And so I was lucky, I was able to get in. And so I did. And I graduated in 3 years later. I was in the Army Chair Corps. No, I was in the Army Air Force, but I sat in a chair because I worked in an office.
Okay.
I worked in an office with a lot of these veterans and stuff that were coming back from overseas. So I did get to meet a lot of those people. And it was very interesting because they were all in their late 20s or something. And they were coming back and they wanted to get out, and they wanted to get on either with a job they learned while they were in the service, or they wanted to get back to college. If I had stayed in the next month, I would have been a sergeant. I would have had another stripe and a thing on me. That's all I was as a corporal, but yeah, I would have, I was going to be a sergeant the next month, but I didn't want to be a sergeant. I wanted to get out. I wanted to get out. I wanted to get back to college. My father-in-law could talk to a telephone pole and it would answer him. But anyway, he worked at Hyannisport with the president. And one day, he heard a knock on the kitchen door. They used the kitchen door as a headquarters. They had to make a round and punch a clock, different places on the campus. And so then he'd go back to the kitchen. And this one day, President Kennedy knocked on the door and opened it. He says, "Sir, do you have any coffee around here?" And my father-in-law didn't know what to say. Yes, sir, we do. He said, "Could I have a cup?" The two of them, just the President of the United States and my father-in-law, sat and had coffee together. To make a little bit more of the same story, now this isn't about me, but it's about my father-in-law. He had a heart attack, and he came up to our house in Peru to recuperate. And that is when the president got shot in Dallas. He saw it on TV in my house. We thought he was going to have another heart attack right then, because he really, really did get attached to all of the Kennedy family. And there's a lot of individual stories, but that relates to my father-in-law. That's not me.